are very religious. Yes, for instance, the San Gennaro miracle in Naples can be mentioned, that the blood is there's some sort of bulb in which the blood of San Gennaro is supposed to be functioning, but the skeptics and the other scientists are not allowed to examine this phenomenon really. But it's true that this is so controversial. Whereas, for instance, the Lourdes miracle in France, miracles are not so controversial. So maybe it's really something about this stereotype of being very religious, more religious than usually. I would say that among the southern nations, the Portuguese are even more religious than Italians, but the Italians are pretty religious. Especially in the south, communism and religiosity are not against each other. They are very often very. For instance, there's a legitimate theory, which is, I think, true to some extent, that in the regions there were many monasteries, so very huge amounts of religious people. Also, communism was doing well. Fare bella figura is the concentration on the aesthetics, on the gesture. The Italians have this gesticolare, the whole alphabet of presenting the whole different vocabulary among like 200 something, 200 odd gestures which are UNESCO heritage, considered to be by UNESCO as a human heritage. So there's really something, and they are considering this fare bella figura. They are in the same time very individualistic, but in the same time very egalitarian. The Italian cuisine, which is always guaranteed to be tasty, is also very nutritious. It's not an elite small cutlets like in France, the bourguignon something or something. That kind of attitude towards cuisine would be inacceptable for Italians. It is unacceptable. It should be working man food, but also very tasty food. So we have guaranteed that they are going to be very tasty, and they have this. So they are very individualistic and at the same time very egalitarian, which is very interesting combination. Usually Italian politicians are like Forza Italia, Berlusconi, very individualistic and very anti-communist in the same time, and or very much egalitarian, but more egalitarian than really classic socialists. Maccaroni, of course, tradizionalismo, modernismo, they combine the two. Of course, this is these two tendencies, the Mussolini tendency of modernismo and the Marinetti, and the modernismo as alternativo al borghese. It was coined in the 1920s as some sort of military. There was a thinking that if the nation should be modernized or militarized. At the end, they have chose militarization, making the whole society in the fascist way, so the civilians were behaving like soldiers and were organized as soldiers. This tendency, this idea won, but the other was the very hardcore modernization, with also like Mussolini wanted, also the modernists wanted, the political modernists like Marinetti, they wanted to get rid of all those monument-oriented and art-oriented mentality. They thought that this type of mentality is making Italians weaker. The same problem have had, for instance, the dictator of Portugal, Salazar. And when I mentioned the being on strike Italian style, I meant that if you are, if you really can observe being on strike Italian style, that means the Italians are working, right? The problem with Portugal, for instance, the huge societal problem today is that the people are going to work, they're keeping their hours, they're showing up on time, and they are also going home on time. But they are not working when being at work. This is the problem, because they are on constant strike Italian style, really. But the Italians are not. So we have a very strong proof the Italians are generally not lazy. Laziness is not supposed, and we can also quote the sorpasso, as I mentioned before, and we can also mention the huge careers that were made by humble Italian workers in the United States, for instance. They had made these